In moments of conflict, there's often an unspoken expectation for an emotional response: anger, frustration, or defensiveness. It's as if we're conditioned to react, to defend ourselves, or to escalate the situation. But what if there was another way? What if, instead of matching anger with anger or frustration with frustration, we chose silence? Silence, when used intentionally, can be one of the most powerful responses in times of provocation. It speaks volumes about emotional intelligence and self control. It's not about withdrawing or ignoring the situation, but rather about responding with a calm, composed presence that refuses to be swept away by the turmoil around you. Mastering the art of silence in these moments doesn't mean you're weak or passive, it means you've cultivated strength and resilience. It's the ability to stand firm, unshaken, and unprovoked by external forces. And this power is something that can transform your relationships, your sense of self, and how you navigate the world. In the following exploration, we'll dive deeper into why silence is such a potent tool for emotional mastery, how it helps you reclaim control over your responses, and how it can lead to greater inner peace. The next time you find yourself at the edge of a heated moment, you might just find that silence is your strongest ally. Human nature has a way of pushing buttons, whether consciously or unconsciously. In many situations, people provoke emotional reactions, often out of insecurity, ego, or a desire to assert control. The need to provoke can stem from a variety of reasons, including attempting to gain validation or to feel more powerful in a situation. When people are unsure of themselves or their place in the world, they might use conflict as a means to draw attention, to challenge others, or to dominate a situation. Provoking anger, frustration, or defensiveness from someone else is often a method of temporarily elevating their own status or sense of control. It's as if their emotional turmoil gives them a sense of strength, or at least a temporary distraction from their own vulnerabilities. Social norms and expectations also play a huge role in this behavior. For centuries, our society has equated outward emotion, especially anger, with power. Think about it. How often have we been taught that strong leaders are those who can display their emotions forcefully? Movies, media, and history often glorify those who express anger as powerful, commanding, and in control. Anger, in particular, is often portrayed as a tool for asserting dominance and proving strength. Because of this, there's an ingrained expectation in our culture that emotions, especially loud, angry ones, are a way of claiming power. This social conditioning has created a situation where emotional outbursts are not only expected, but sometimes even celebrated. We are almost conditioned to believe that losing our temper is a necessary step in conflict resolution. On a psychological level, people often provoke anger because it serves a deeper internal purpose. When someone can elicit an angry response, it can validate their own feelings or insecurities. In a sense, it becomes a way for them to feel justified in their emotions, whether those emotions are fear, anxiety, or self doubt. If someone can provoke you into a response, it allows them to feel that they've won in some sense. They might use your reaction to reinforce their belief that they are right or that their view of the world is justified. The more emotional you become, the less control you seem to have, and the more they can manipulate or validate their perspective in the situation. Real world examples of this dynamic occur daily in various settings. In the workplace, a colleague might try to provoke you into a heated discussion over a minor disagreement, knowing that if they can make you react emotionally, it shifts the power dynamic. They might do this intentionally to gain control over a project or undermine your credibility. In personal relationships, one person might trigger their partner's anger to deflect attention from their own behavior or to gain a sense of superiority in an argument. Even in public settings, such as on social media, people often provoke others to spark outrage, knowing that a strong emotional response will garner attention, support, or validation. This expectation of anger is so deeply embedded in human interactions that many people anticipate it before it even happens. They're almost looking for it, expecting an emotional outburst as a natural part of conflict. In fact, when faced with conflict, most people are conditioned to meet anger with anger, frustration with frustration. It's like a reflex. The moment someone challenges you or criticizes you, the automatic expectation is that you will defend yourself emotionally. It's seen as the normal response. And unfortunately, it's often the most predictable one. In a world that thrives on heightened emotional exchanges, silence can be a profound and powerful departure from this norm, a shift from expected chaos to unexpected calm. In essence, the reason people expect your anger stems from a blend of societal conditioning, psychological dynamics, and the human desire for validation. They provoke knowing that your emotional outburst might serve their need for control, justification, or dominance. But here's the powerful thing: when you choose silence in the face of provocation, you break this cycle. You stop playing into their hands and reclaim control of your emotional state. Silence in this context becomes your strongest response, turning the expected storm into a calm, steady response that leaves others disarmed and confused, no longer able to provoke or control you. Silence, often misunderstood as weakness or passivity, is actually one of the most powerful tools you can wield in moments of conflict. It is not the absence of reaction, but the active decision to maintain control over your emotions and responses. When faced with provocation, choosing silence shows profound emotional intelligence. It demonstrates an awareness of the situation, a control over your impulses, and a refusal to be controlled by someone else's actions. At its core, silence is a form of emotional mastery. When someone insults or criticizes you, the typical reflex is to respond emotionally. However, silence allows you to pause and choose how you will respond, if at all. This pause is an opportunity to maintain emotional regulation, to assess the situation without the cloud of anger or frustration skewing your judgment. By choosing not to react, you create space between the stimulus, the provocation, and your response. This space is where your power lies. Emotional responses are often knee jerk reactions that arise from being triggered, but silence allows you to decide how much energy you want to give to any situation. In this way, silence becomes a powerful communication tool. By withholding the expected emotional response, anger, frustration, defensiveness, you convey an inner strength. The decision to remain silent communicates that you are unshaken, undisturbed, and in control. It shows that you are not easily provoked, and your emotional stability is not contingent on the actions of others. A loud or angry response, on the other hand, is often seen as a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you have allowed external circumstances to dictate your internal state. Silence, therefore, can be far more powerful than any angry outburst because it reflects self control, peace, and strength. The philosophy of Stoicism aligns perfectly with this idea. Stoics like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus emphasize the importance of emotional control and self mastery. Marcus Aurelius, in his meditations, often wrote about maintaining composure in the face of adversity and conflict. He reminds us that we are not disturbed by external events, but by our judgments of those events. If someone insults you, the insult itself has no power over you. What matters is how you choose to react to it. Aurelius teaches us that true power lies not in reacting emotionally, but in maintaining our own peace regardless of what happens around us. Epictetus, another prominent Stoic philosopher, offers a similar view. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This Stoic teaching aligns perfectly with the idea of silence as a powerful response. When someone expects you to respond with anger or defensiveness, choosing silence challenges their assumption that you will be emotionally manipulated. In doing so, you prevent their actions from controlling your emotional state. You take away their power over you, and by doing so, you empower yourself. Silence also disrupts the typical cycle of conflict. When someone expects you to become angry or defensive, they often seek validation for their own actions. They might want to be right or to stir up conflict for their own emotional satisfaction. However, when you choose silence, you force them to confront the reality of their own behavior. Their attempts to provoke you lose their power because you do not engage with their emotional game. The absence of your emotional reaction disrupts their expectations and in turn forces them to reflect on their own actions. This shift can sometimes leave them unsettled as they are no longer able to manipulate the situation to their advantage. Let's consider a real world example. Imagine you are in a workplace meeting and a colleague who frequently undermines your contributions tries to provoke you with a sarcastic comment. Their goal is likely to make you react defensively, to either argue or justify your point. In the past, you might have felt compelled to defend yourself or get frustrated. However, this time you choose to remain silent. You look at them, take a deep breath, and simply stay quiet. The room falls into an awkward silence for a moment. Your colleague, expecting a reaction, is thrown off. They may repeat the comment or escalate their tone, but this time your silence communicates strength. It shows that their words have no effect on you, that you are unshaken. This forces the colleague to either back off or reflect on their behavior. Either way, the situation is diffused without any escalation on your part. In this scenario, your silence speaks louder than any words could. It disarms the provoker because they are no longer able to draw out the emotional response they were seeking. Your choice to remain calm and composed shifts the power dynamic and leaves you in control of the situation. This is the true strength of silence. It is not about retreating or avoiding conflict. It's about choosing to engage with the situation from a place of inner peace and control rather than being manipulated by the emotional triggers of others. In summary, silence is not passivity. It is a deliberate and powerful response that communicates strength, emotional intelligence, and self control. It aligns with Stoic teachings on emotional mastery, where your peace is not contingent on external events or reactions. Choosing silence over anger disrupts expectations, leaves the provoker without power, and ultimately strengthens your own emotional resilience. Non reaction is one of the most powerful tools in emotional mastery. It may seem passive on the surface, but it is, in fact, a strategic and intentional response that can completely alter the course of conflict. When someone expects you to retaliate, whether through anger, frustration, or defensiveness, choosing not to react creates a disruption. Non reaction challenges their expectation and throws them off balance. It forces them to reconsider their actions as they realize that their attempt to provoke has failed. By remaining silent, you remove yourself from the emotional drama and maintain control over the situation. In many conflicts, there is an ongoing cycle of escalation. One person provokes, the other reacts, and then the situation intensifies. This dynamic is perpetuated by our natural inclination to defend ourselves or justify our feelings when we are attacked. However, non reaction breaks this cycle. By refusing to engage with the provocation, you stop the conflict from escalating. Instead of playing into the aggressor's game, you shift the focus to their behavior. They are the ones left to reflect on their actions while you remain calm and composed. This disrupts the typical back and forth of conflict and prevents it from spiraling out of control. One of the most profound aspects of non reaction is its link to self respect. When we respond to provocation with anger or frustration, we give away our emotional energy to the other person. We allow them to dictate our emotional state and control our reactions. In contrast, non reaction is an act of self respect. It's a declaration that you will not be emotionally manipulated or dragged into conflict. It shows that you value your own peace more than the desire to win an argument or prove a point. Choosing silence in the face of provocation is a way of maintaining control over your emotions, protecting your inner peace, and refusing to engage in unhealthy dynamics. Non reaction is also a practice of emotional control and discipline. It requires a level of self awareness and restraint to resist the urge to react impulsively. In a world that often encourages quick responses and emotional outbursts, non reaction is a form of discipline that sets you apart. It shows that you are not a slave to your emotions, but rather you are in control of them. By choosing not to react in anger or frustration, you communicate that your emotional state is not for others to manipulate. This level of self control not only strengthens your emotional resilience, but also helps to preserve your peace in the face of conflict. Consider a real world example. You're in a meeting at work, and a colleague interrupts you mid sentence, speaking over you as if your contribution isn't important. The typical response might be to argue, get defensive, or raise your voice in frustration. However, instead of reacting, you remain silent. You pause, take a deep breath, and continue your point without acknowledging their interruption. The silence speaks volumes. It conveys that you are undisturbed by their behavior and that you will not let their actions derail your composure. The aggressor, in this case, is left without the reaction they were likely expecting. Their attempt to assert dominance through interruption is met with calm resolve, which often causes them to reconsider their approach. In the aftermath, the silence shifts the power dynamic. Your non reaction sends a clear message. You are not affected by their behavior, and you will not participate in their emotional manipulation. This can be incredibly disarming. The aggressor is left without the emotional validation they sought, and the focus of the conversation remains on the content of your message rather than on the conflict itself. Moreover, the people in the room who witness this exchange are likely to see you as composed, confident, and in control. Non reaction not only serves to diffuse conflict, but also helps to maintain your authority and dignity in challenging situations. In conclusion, non reaction is not a passive response, it is an active and powerful choice. It breaks the cycle of conflict, shifts the focus onto the aggressor's behavior, and is an act of self respect that protects your emotional energy. Non reaction requires discipline, emotional control, and a commitment to maintaining your inner peace. By refusing to engage in emotional escalation, you preserve your power, disrupt expectations, and demonstrate strength in the face of provocation. Silence is not just a tool for emotional control, but also a crucial form of self preservation. When faced with conflict, emotional turmoil, or negativity, choosing silence can be an intentional act of protecting your inner peace. Engaging in every emotional flare up or argument can be mentally and physically exhausting. The constant back and forth drains your energy, leaving you more vulnerable to stress and frustration. But when you choose silence, you take a step back and prioritize your well being rather than getting caught in the emotional chaos of the moment. Silence allows you to maintain your composure and protect your peace, creating space between you and the external stimuli that may otherwise destabilize you. One of the key aspects of silence is self preservation is its connection to emotional boundaries. Boundaries are essential for protecting your emotional well being, and silence is one of the clearest ways to communicate those boundaries. When you choose not to react or engage, you're signaling that you will not tolerate negative behavior that threatens your peace. Silence becomes your boundary, a powerful statement that says, I refuse to engage in this toxic or draining cycle. This form of boundary setting can be incredibly empowering because it ensures that you're not constantly giving away your emotional energy to situations or people who aren't worth it. It allows you to preserve your energy for what truly matters to you without becoming entangled in unnecessary drama. Not every battle is worth fighting, and many conflicts, especially those triggered by ego or miscommunication, can easily be avoided by simply choosing silence. By refusing to react emotionally or get involved in every conflict, you can prevent the unnecessary emotional toll that often accompanies these situations. It's easy to get caught up in the need to be right or to defend yourself, but many times silence is the wiser and more effective choice. It's a way of conserving your energy and choosing your battles wisely. By stepping away from toxic or unproductive interactions, you protect your emotional health, leaving more space for personal growth, reflection, and peace. A real world example of silence as self preservation can be seen in a heated argument with a loved one. Picture a scenario where you're in the middle of a disagreement and emotions are running high. The urge to defend yourself or escalate the situation might be strong, but instead you choose silence. By staying quiet, you create a pause that allows both you and the other person to calm down and reflect on what's truly important. This silence can act as a cooling off period, preventing further escalation and giving both parties time to process their emotions. Often, when tempers settle, it becomes clear that the conflict wasn't as important as it seemed in the heat of the moment. Choosing silence in this instance helps preserve the relationship, avoids saying things you might regret, and ensures that you're not dragged into an emotional spiral that doesn't serve your peace. In this way, silence becomes a form of self preservation, protecting you from unnecessary emotional strain and preserving your energy for the things that truly matter in life. Silence is not just a way to avoid conflict, it is also a powerful tool for self reflection. When you choose silence in moments of provocation or tension, you create a pause, a gap between stimulus and response. This pause, though brief, offers an invaluable opportunity for reflection. It gives you a moment to assess your emotions, question your reactions, and decide on the best course of action. Instead of immediately responding out of frustration or anger, silence allows you to reflect on what's truly important in the situation. It grants you space to evaluate whether reacting is necessary or if staying quiet is the wiser choice for maintaining your peace. Through silence, you become more self aware. Without the distraction of immediate reaction, you can tune into your internal state and gain clarity about what's driving your emotions. Are you upset because of a past wound, a misunderstanding, or simply a misunderstanding in the moment? Silence allows you to separate yourself from the emotional turbulence so you can look at the situation from a clearer perspective. You can evaluate the situation with a calm mind and choose the response that will benefit your peace and well being in the long run, rather than impulsively lashing out or getting caught in unnecessary conflict. But silence doesn't only affect you, it can also have a profound impact on others. When someone expects a reaction from you, whether it's anger, frustration, or defensiveness, and instead they receive silence, it forces them to reflect on their own behavior. Without the immediate validation of a response, they're left with the opportunity to consider why you're not engaging and what their actions have triggered. Silence disrupts their expectations and puts the onus on them to think critically about how they're acting. It shifts the power dynamic, taking away their ability to control your emotions and forcing them to confront their own behavior without the external validation of your reaction. A real world example of this can be seen in the workplace. Imagine a person, let's call him John, who regularly lashes out during meetings. Whenever someone disagrees with him or offers constructive criticism, his immediate reaction is to become defensive or dismissive. This behavior has created a tense atmosphere in the workplace. However, during a critical meeting, John is met with unexpected silence when he begins to interrupt or argue. No one engages with his outburst or rises to his defense. Instead, everyone remains calm and composed, choosing silence over reaction. This shift in response forces John to pause and reconsider his behavior. Over time, he begins to recognize the impact of his actions on others and starts to reflect on his communication style. The silence not only prevents further escalation, but also provides John with an opportunity to self reflect and change his approach to conflicts and communication. In this way, silence serves as a powerful tool for both personal reflection and influencing change in others. By embracing silence, you give yourself the chance to pause, reflect, and act intentionally. At the same time, you offer others the space to reconsider their behavior and reflect on how they've contributed to the situation. This creates an environment where reflection and growth are encouraged, and it fosters healthier, more constructive interactions. Silence is not an act of avoidance, it is an art form that requires discipline, control, and emotional resilience. It is not about running from conflict, but about choosing how to respond when provoked. In moments of tension or confrontation, remaining silent becomes an intentional decision that serves to maintain your peace and emotional integrity. It's an active choice that communicates strength, composure, and self control, traits that can be far more powerful than a quick emotional reaction. The discipline required to remain silent, especially in moments when you feel triggered or upset, is immense. It requires you to hold back from expressing knee jerk reactions driven by impulse or frustration. Silence is an opportunity to pause, reflect, and process before speaking, ensuring that your response is thoughtful and measured. This discipline, though challenging at times, ultimately becomes a tool for emotional resilience. The ability to resist reacting emotionally, even when you feel your temper rising, is a demonstration of inner strength. It shows that you are not controlled by your emotions, but that you possess the control to navigate situations with calm and clarity. Patience is also a core component of silence. When you choose not to respond immediately, especially in heated moments, you cultivate patience, not just with others, but with yourself. Waiting for the right moment to speak or choosing to remain quiet in the face of provocation takes practice and patience. This can be difficult, especially when emotions are running high and the temptation to defend yourself or retaliate is strong. However, in those moments, silence becomes a tool that empowers you rather than diminishes you. The ability to hold back, to wait until you are fully composed, not only prevents further escalation, but also strengthens your ability to face challenges calmly. Silence also carries a deep connection to confidence. Often we feel the need to respond or defend ourselves to prove our worth or assert our authority. Yet silence can be just as powerful a statement. When you choose not to react impulsively, you send a message that you are secure in yourself. You don't need validation from others, and you certainly don't need to justify your worth or explain yourself. Silence in these situations is an expression of self assurance. It's the quiet confidence that shows you don't need to engage in every battle or prove anything through words. Your silence speaks volumes about your inner strength, and others can sense that confidence often without a single word exchanged. A real world example of this can be seen in a team leader who practices silence during tense situations. Let's say there's a disagreement during a high stakes meeting where emotions are running high. The leader, instead of jumping into the fray with their own opinion, chooses silence. Rather than getting involved in the argument, they maintain a calm and composed demeanor, allowing the team members to express themselves fully. This not only diffuses the immediate tension, but also gives the leader authority. Silence here isn't a passive retreat, but a demonstration of power and emotional control. The leader's ability to remain quiet signals to the group that they are in control of their emotions in the situation, and this generates respect from the team. The leader does not need to speak over others to assert their position. Their silence commands attention and maintains order. Moreover, silence, when used intentionally, builds respect. When you refrain from reacting in ways that others might expect, particularly in conflict situations, you show that you are unaffected by attempts to provoke or escalate. Over time, this consistent silence, this measured response to conflict, gains the respect of those around you. They begin to recognize that your silence is not a sign of weakness, but a display of emotional discipline and maturity. People start to understand that your silence isn't avoidance, but a deliberate choice to remain in control of your responses and your emotional state. In the end, mastering the art of disciplined silence is a form of strength and confidence. It's a skill that, while challenging to cultivate, offers tremendous benefits, both for your own emotional well being and in how others perceive and respect you. Through patience, discipline, and emotional resilience, silence transforms from a simple absence of words into a powerful tool for self mastery and leadership. It teaches you to communicate with your presence rather than your words, and that in itself is a form of wisdom. Silence, when used thoughtfully, can act as a powerful bridge in relationships. In the midst of tension or disagreement, the absence of immediate reaction creates space for understanding and empathy to grow. When emotions are high, it's often easy to fall into the trap of responding defensively, which can further escalate the conflict. However, choosing silence instead of reacting can provide both parties with a moment to pause, collect their thoughts, and approach the situation from a place of clarity rather than emotional impulse. This pause allows for a deeper understanding of each other's perspectives and the emotional context behind the conflict. One of the most transformative effects of silence in relationships is its ability to de escalate arguments. In the heat of a dispute, it's common for both individuals to try to prove their point, sometimes without fully listening to one another. Silence, however, disrupts this cycle. By refraining from reacting immediately, you signal to the other person that you are open to hearing them out, allowing the conversation to shift from combative to collaborative. Instead of reacting in anger or frustration, silence creates an opportunity for reflection and a more thoughtful response. In doing so, it allows for better communication and a higher likelihood of resolution. Silence also fosters personal growth within relationships. When both parties choose to remain silent in moments of conflict, they give themselves the space to reflect on their actions and emotions. Rather than jumping into defense mode, individuals have the time to evaluate the situation more critically, which can lead to greater self awareness and emotional maturity. In many cases, this introspection can lead to reconciliation as both individuals may recognize their own roles in the conflict and approach one another with a renewed sense of understanding. A real world example of the transformative power of silence can be seen in a romantic relationship. Imagine a couple in the middle of an argument where one partner feels hurt and the other is defensive. Instead of lashing out in frustration, one partner chooses to remain silent, allowing a moment of stillness to settle over the conversation. This silence gives both individuals time to cool down and think more clearly. When the conversation resumes, both partners are in a better frame of mind to discuss their feelings. acknowledge each other's concerns, and come to a resolution without the burden of unresolved anger. The ability to remain silent in this case prevented the argument from spiraling and allowed for a more thoughtful and empathetic dialogue. Silence, when used intentionally, promotes mutual respect and understanding in relationships, especially during challenging times. By choosing silence over immediate reaction, individuals show that they value the relationship enough to avoid unnecessary conflict and prioritize resolution. It reinforces the idea that both parties are willing to listen, reflect, and grow together. In relationships where silence is used as a tool for de escalation and communication, there is a greater sense of trust and respect between the individuals involved. It cultivates a healthy environment where both partners feel heard and valued, even in the midst of disagreement. In conclusion, silence can be a transformative force in relationships, promoting understanding, de escalation, personal growth, and mutual respect. By choosing silence in moments of tension, individuals create space for reflection, communication, and reconciliation. Far from being a passive response, silence becomes an active tool that deepens connection and strengthens the foundation of relationships. When used thoughtfully, it transforms conflict into an opportunity. In many societies, there is a cultural expectation to react swiftly and loudly in moments of conflict or tension. From social media to everyday interactions, the emphasis is often placed on immediate verbal responses, emotional expressions, and visible reactions. This cultural norm suggests that in order to be heard, one must speak up quickly, often without taking time to reflect. In cultures that prioritize quick responses, silence can be seen as a weakness or a sign of passivity, even though, in reality, it can be an act of deep thought and emotional intelligence. Silence, however, is not valued in environments that glorify quick reactions and emotional outbursts, leaving little room for the deeper contemplation that can lead to wisdom and peace. In a world that thrives on constant noise and the need to fill every silence with words, choosing silence can be a radical and powerful act of resistance. Silence in this context becomes a form of strength, one that challenges the need for validation through vocal expression. It allows individuals to assert their autonomy and remain grounded in their own truth without succumbing to the pressures of external expectations. In contrast to the loud, reactive culture, silence represents a form of emotional and mental discipline. It's not about being silent out of fear or avoidance, but choosing silence as a tool for inner peace, clarity, and personal empowerment. Silence also plays a unique role in challenging harmful societal behaviors and promoting social justice. In situations of verbal aggression, bullying, or injustice, silence can disrupt the power dynamics that typically arise from confrontational exchanges. By refusing to engage in the typical verbal battle, one refuses to participate in the cycle of negativity. This non reaction challenges those who rely on verbal violence to assert their dominance, forcing them to confront their behavior rather than receive validation from their victim. Silence in these cases can be a tool of resistance, a refusal to give in to the aggression, and an assertion of one's emotional boundaries. A real world example of silence as a form of resistance can be seen in the actions of public figures or activists who use silence to challenge societal norms. One such example is the powerful protest method of athletes who kneel during the national anthem to silently protest systemic injustices, particularly racial inequality. In these moments, the act of silence communicates a message more profoundly than words ever could. By choosing silence over the expected vocal reactions, these athletes force the world to listen to their message, shifting the focus from the noise of the crowd to the deeper issue they are standing against. Their silence, in this case, becomes a form of protest that demands attention and sparks dialogue about important social issues. Ultimately, the cultural and societal impact of silence is profound. In a world that encourages quick reactions and emotional outbursts, choosing silence offers an alternative, a way to reclaim control over our emotional responses and stand firm in our convictions. Silence is not a passive act, it is an active form of resistance, self preservation, and emotional mastery. By redefining the cultural norms surrounding communication and response, silence can be transformed into a powerful tool for challenging harmful behaviors, promoting personal growth, and contributing to social change. In a world dominated by noise, silence stands as a beacon of strength, resilience, and profound wisdom, or growth and understanding, allowing both parties to emerge stronger and more united. Throughout this exploration, we have delved into the transformative power of silence, how, in moments of provocation, choosing silence over anger not only demonstrates true strength, but also reflects emotional mastery. We've seen that silence is far from a passive or weak response. Rather, it is an active decision to retain control over our reactions, allowing us to maintain our dignity, peace, and self respect. It disrupts expectations, breaks the cycle of conflict, and fosters deeper self awareness. It is a powerful tool for both personal growth and resolving conflict in healthier, more constructive ways. Silence, as we've learned, is a deliberate act of self preservation. It provides a space to protect our emotional energy, set boundaries, and prioritize our inner peace. It is an expression of dignity that allows us to navigate challenges without losing ourselves in the noise of the moment. By embracing silence, we choose to act with intention rather than react impulsively, aligning with our deeper values and principles. Now, I encourage you to begin practicing the power of silence in your own life. When provoked, pause and resist the urge to react immediately. Allow yourself that space to decide how you truly want to respond. Let silence become your shield, your way of reclaiming control over your emotions and interactions. By choosing silence, you empower yourself to navigate life's challenges with grace, wisdom, and inner strength. To conclude, I leave you with a powerful quote from the philosopher Lao Tzu: "Silence is a source of great strength." This simple yet profound statement encapsulates everything we've discussed. Silence, when embraced thoughtfully, is not just the absence of noise, it is the presence of power, peace, and self mastery.